these things, they certainly tie together, and I would just welcome Dave to come to the front and share the next step in this process. So please welcome Dave.
Well, I guess just like Josh says, I'm David Bauer. I graduated from NDSU with a BS in Animal and Range Science. My wife typed this out for me and says, I have a wonderful wife and 3 great kids. And like Josh said, I farm and ranch with my dad and brother. I guess one thing I wanted to know is how many people are doing some type of a grazing or a rotational system in their operations. Well, that's good. That's good. I guess I want to start out with what is a grazing system. I kind of made this up myself, but I think it fits. It's managing of plants and animals in your given resource to produce profit and enjoyment. Because if you don't have profit, you're not going to be in business, and if you don't have enjoyment, you won't want to be in business. I guess we start out with profit. If you don't make money, you're not going to be in business. So with a I was told when I first started this, with a planned grazing system, you can probably double your production, or half the amount of acres you need for cow-calf pair. And then I was told, well, you can probably even do that again if you continue on with your system. So if that logic goes, if you have 1,000 acres and 100 head of cows, that would be 10 acres per cow. If you half that, then you'd be able to run 200 head of cow. If you're going to be more profitable, 200 head is going to be more than 100. Some people don't probably want to do 200 head of cattle. They're happy with the 100 head. In that case, instead of grazing for 5 months, you could graze for 10. Then you're not having that expense. We can improve the land. We can get better diversity in the plants, better water cycling, keep and use every drop of rain on that land. If it's going to rain, you want to be able to catch that, capture it, and keep it on that land so that your plants and animals can use every bit of it. You want to increase biological activity by feeding the microbes. The microbes help the grass, and everything else works way better. And with the soil armor, you can protect the soil surface, and it helps maintain the moisture, the temperature, so you don't have temperature extremes going up and down in the heat, and also it'll warm up earlier in the spring, and it's good habitat, and it keeps the habitat for the microbes. Weed control. This is a picture that I want to show when you're dividing your fences and that kind of thing. You can divide it down in the bottom corner there. You can see that that's a creeping juniper, and I've got some tall hills and stuff that have a lot of this. But when you divide that with polywire, you can get those animals to really impact that area, and there actually is grass starting to grow up through that patch there now. Another thing is a lot of times we call them weeds, but there really is no such thing as a weed in a pasture. Those plants are there telling you something. As far as the creeping juniper, they're on top of tall hills. It's pretty shallow soil. It's just trying to get something on that ground. So if you can make that area a better area for grass to grow, then that's what's going to start growing. Better animal health. The animals are always on fresh grass, and therefore they have a higher plane of nutrition. And they're always on clean ground, so they're not going to be within the same manure pads and getting that different kind of biology. And they're always moving away from the insects. You can't really see it very well, but in the bottom part of that, there's holes going through those pads. and those are dung beetles. And the dung beetles will actually attack the larvae for the fly, and that's my fly control rather than spraying chemicals on. And better management. Every time you move those cows and calves, I generally try to open up the fence and let them walk by me. They want to go to new grass. They don't generally want to break out unless you've left them there too long. Those cows, they start to get so used to you moving them, they'll walk right by. You can see if there's any limps, any trouble with any of the animals at all. And you're also checking the land, the grass, and the bugs on the soil there. This one I wanted to show because this is kind of my mistake here. Now this I'm grazing a cover crop, but it was my first attempt at ultra high density grazing. And what I was doing is I always said, you got to get it all right down on the ground. Well, you got to still give them something to eat. And what they were doing is they were eating it, and you can kind of see where they were actually eating underneath the wire. If they start to eat underneath that wire, they're too hungry. You got to keep them moving. Like Gabe and Paul Brown, they'll move them every couple of hours. That was a little too much for me. What I wanted to do was move them once a day. I should have been either giving them a larger area or a more diverse area. But I did learn something. Well, I guess and the last thing I guess is food. You know, we need to quit thinking of our agricultural products as a commodity and start thinking of them as a food for our families to eat. Healthier soils, and I guess that was back there. If you get a healthier soil, you're going to have healthier food, healthier people. How? Okay, the first thing you want to do is you want to make a plan. You want to figure out what your goals are. Do you want to increase the rest? That's mainly what everyone wants to do. But do you want to increase trampling? Are we trying to get, is it more rank material that you're trying to get down on the ground? You want better manure distribution, weed control, like I showed before. Another thing is are you going to be working those animals? Do you need to have access to corrals at some time during the year? That's all something you kind of come up with in your plan for your grazing. One of the ways to start your grazing system without having to do any fencing at all, it is to combine herds, just like Seth did there. They combine their herds, but one of the big things you got to do when you're doing that is make sure you got the water. When you combine your herds, say you want to run them through your system fast enough, would a tank like that be able to handle from 100 head to 200 head by combining a herd? Well, probably not. Is the recharge fast enough in your tank? Is there enough access? Is the tank large enough? And is there simply enough water in the well? Those are all things you need to think about when you're working towards this. And where is the water located? Would piping be beneficial, or can the cattle walk? Fencing off the water point, or should you switch sides? Now what I'm doing here is I actually just switch the wire from one side to the other. And so they'll come up, they got access to the whole side of the tank, and then when I want them to move, I'll just move that wire to the other side of the tank and then go off again, and then they have access once again. Energizers. I'm a pretty strong believer in you get what you pay for on an Energizer. 110 whenever possible. I use the Gallagher 2500 because that's what I bought in the first place, I guess. StayFix is a pretty good charger, and I think there's other good chargers out there. Those are the ones I know about. You want to pay attention to the joules. That's what's most important is how much of a shock is going through that wire. StayFix M63 is 63 joule. One way to check that is if someone comes out and asks you, well, is that fence hot? And you just say, well, you try it and let's see. And that's kind of how these electric fences work. You know, the cows, once they get hit with it once, they don't want to get hit with it again. So if you have a good charger on it, they get hit with it once, they're trained, they don't want to mess with it again. I've done it sometimes where I've actually forgot to put the wire back up and it was just laying on the ground. They still never crossed it because they're on new grass, they're not really pressured to do anything more, and they got hit with it one time and it was really bad, so they don't want to do it again. Grounding rods are another thing. They say to have a grounding rod for each joule that you have on your Energizer. What I generally try, that'd be a lot of rods. What I generally try to do is have them in a fairly low area. I'll probably put 5, 6, 7. If I'm running into trouble with it, then I'll try to put more. That's usually the first place I'll look is the grounding rods. Well, besides just being wound up in something, but I try to get it like in a drip line of a building or in lower areas that are a little moist, and that helps with the grounding rod system. I've got 2 different systems that I've started with. My semi-permanent, I like to call it, is a high tensile wire. I use a 2 7/8 inch drill stem from the oil fields, and I pound them in, and then I use T-posts, and that seems to work pretty good. I've heard some people say that if you can get your grass as good as the grass is on the outside of the fence, then you're doing pretty good. Well, it's kind of hard to tell in this picture, but actually the grass, I think, is better on the inside of the fence than it is on the outside. It hasn't been just taking the hay off of all the time. On the other side, it's getting the microbiology working and working well. So, I guess some of the benefits of it, it's all set up as far as the semi-permanent fencing. That's one of my systems there. And it's all set up. The cattle kind of get to know the system. You know they know where the gates are. You can kind of just go out there and they'll start to move for you even. It's easier for planning sometimes because you know just how many acres is there, you know how many cows you're going to be putting on it, how many days you're going to have. And it's quick to divide for high intensity grazing. That picture where I had the poly wire across there with the creeping juniper there, that was one of these fields. In fact, that was that number 25 there. Disadvantages, I think it's a little less flexible. If you're going to be gone for a few days and they've got that area grazed out, you got to have someone go down there and move your cows for you or whatever. The pastures are all divided up. I've got some landlords, they like to come back and go hunting. With all those cross fences in there, it's something they have to go around. And then some people just don't like the view of all those fences because you start putting, that's not too bad, but you start trying to get 16 or 18 pastures in there. There's a lot of wires you got to cross just to go across your hayland or out into your pasture. My second one I like to call my flex fencing. And there I use 1/16 aircraft cable, and I buy special reels from 7L Livestock Equipment, and I put about 4,000 feet of cable, and I use pigtail posts. Here too, I'm really close to the water there. That originally, when I first got this, was a lot of Canada thistle, and now I think it's tansy mustard is there. And in the foreground, you can see it's shorter stuff because it's actually closer to the water. Yeah, there's the pigtail posts, and that's what the reels look like from 7L. It's a neoprene and a steel reel, and it's kind of built to hold that extra weight. With a four-wheeler, this was before the plan. There was a grazing system there. You just moved them from one side to the other. This is 2 quarters. And you just kind of moved them from one side to the other. The little dimple there in the middle is where the water tank was fenced into. So with a four-wheeler, I can have about 4,000 feet. It's about 1,000 feet in from the one end is where the water is. So with four-wheeler, I can have the a fence up and down in about 40 minutes. Now, it seems like quite a bit, but I think the advantages of it outweigh the time. I hate to do things just a little bit, so I figured we'd go from 2 pastures to 34. I wanted to really see some change. I guess some of the advantage to this, I like it because it's a little more flexible. If I'm going to be gone or we're going to be doing something that I know I'm not going to have a chance to really get up there and have the chance to move them, I can just give them a few more or a few less. And then, like I said, those lines don't have to be straight. If you're going along and you want to really get a buckbrush patch knocked down or something like that, I'll swerve over and go right through it. It seems like the cattle want to go along the fence, but not too close. And you can really knock some weeds down and stuff like that too. There I go talking about weeds that are not really there. All right. Another thing that I like about this flex system is you can use that same fencing year round. I'll use that also now during the winter to put things up. When it's done, when I'm done with the season, there's no fencing left in the pasture. It looks like just a wide open pasture just like it was before. So if you want to do hunting or any kind of activity out there, it's wide open again. The other thing I like about it is it's stronger than the poly wire, and it's way easier to work with than the high tensile. Some of the disadvantages, I guess, you have to plan a little bit better because you have to know how far you got to go to get your 9 acres or your 20 acres or whatever you want to do. You have to kind of have a little better understanding of where you got to go. And sometimes you just don't have time, and you get up there and you go, oh, today's the day I got to move them. And you just got to take the time. So that's one of the disadvantages. You do have to put them up and take them down and that kind of thing. And then the last thing is wind. That cable on real windy days will sometimes wear on that pigtail post and then they short out. But if you're taking them out when they're live, you find out which ones are shorting out quicker. What I like to do, this is a slide I like to show. That was my plan before, and this is kind of what happened. And after the first year I did that, you can still see in there where I had those lines. And if you go out into the pasture, you can actually see where the lines were run because they don't eat underneath that wire because they don't want to get chopped. So there's actually pretty rank grass right where it is. But with the flex fencing, you never get it back in that same spot again, so it's not a big deal. So I guess that's the way I like that. There's my weed control again. What I like to do is I like to move about every 3 days. I think that's better for the animals because once they've been on the pasture and urinated and dunged and all that, they don't like to eat around the same thing that they're doing that on. So they like to be on fresh ground. I think it's better for the land because I don't think it's as important how much impact you put on that ground. Now, Josh probably would disagree with me, but sometimes you can really nail that ground pretty hard. But if it's getting rested the entire rest of the year, that stuff will come back like a jungle. It's just amazing. It's almost like your corrals in your barnyard. You know, you really nailed that all winter long, but once you left it out, those weeds will grow 10 feet tall if you left them. The microbes also in the cattle's stomach makes a difference. With grazing at a higher level like that, when you move them every 3 days, and I think there's probably some studies could be done, but the microbes in the stomach, if you're moving them every 3 days, those microbes are used to using that specific type of grass, a little more lush, a little more vegetative. And I suppose as the year goes along, it gets less than that, but the microbes in the stomach change. If you leave them in there for, say, 20 days, those microbes in their stomach are changing to a more rank a different type of grass, and then when you move them, then those microbes in the stomach have to change also. You want to watch the animals. You want to make sure that their stomachs are full from the rib to their hip, and like I said, the cow shouldn't eat underneath the wire. And I like to try to take half, leave half, just as a kind of a rule of thumb. If you're really trying to get performance, you probably only want to take the top third or even just a couple bites. The big thing is you don't want to take a rebite once that grass starts to grow, and that's part of it too. And you have to have fun. If you don't like it, your operation won't succeed. And don't worry about what everybody else thinks. You have enough to worry about already.